Hello and welcome to the Basic to Bold podcast. I am your host, Jennifer, and today I am excited to talk to you about happiness, finding joy. What is stopping you from finding your joy? And this, I have to say, is probably one of my biggest struggles in life. So I love helping people figure it out, because for me, it took so long to find something that brought joy and happiness into my life. And one of the things, just to start at the very beginning, one of the things that I started to notice pretty early on is people would say things like, go back to a time when you were really happy. And I'm like, yeah, that's a little, and I would be sitting there and I'm like, I can't, I don't know. And it's not to say that life was horrible. I just didn't really have any great memories of just like pure happiness and just absolute joy. And so I don't even know why. I don't know if it was just a lot of chaos that was going on, but basically what I've come to realize for myself is it doesn't really matter. As I look at the here and now, when I started trying to fix my thinking and fix how I was feeling, what I realized was, I don't really care what happened in the past. I don't really care who we're going to blame or who's at fault. I just want to fix it. Like, what's going on, let's fix it. So that's really what I want to talk about is, yes, the past might come up because that is probably an issue and part of it. However, I'm not really interested in the blaming game of, this person did this and this person did that. And I do totally recognize that there are sometimes we need to work through that, and we need to allow ourselves to grieve, and we need to allow ourselves to bring up that emotion. Totally agree. Totally necessary. But for this episode, I really wanted to focus on, here is, once I kind of got past that, like recognized there was chaos, recognized there was stress and a lot of stuff going on. Okay, what do we do? Like, what are the actual steps that I took, that I did to get to a place where I'm really excited about life? I'm really finding a lot of joy and a lot of happiness, and how I did that. One of the things, as I started diving into this, that I would find is a lot of mentors or coaches, they would say, talking about gratitude, and yeah, that's important. And that was amazing. It's an amazing part of life to be grateful. But it just didn't really help. So if you're one of those people who you keep listening to people and it's just not helping, right? Like, they're just, the words that they're saying, you're like, I kind of get it, and I kind of get what you're saying, but that's not really helping. Then hang on, because I have a whole new perspective of how I came about this and how I got out of this dredge of hating life into, oh my gosh, life is pretty amazing. Like, okay, I get why people like waking up every day, because that wasn't always the case. So the first thing that I really started diving into is, started really looking at like childhood and what was going on, and recognizing that for me, the first thing that I realized is there was something blocking my happiness. And for me personally, I don't know that this is everybody, but I'm going to just mention mine. But my challenge to you is, while you're listening to mine, figure out what is blocking your happiness. Can you kind of pinpoint what is one or two things that you can really think of that's blocking it? So for me, one thing that was just massive eye-opening, when I realized that no matter what I did in my mind, it was never good enough. So I would make breakfast for my family, right? Simple breakfast. Well, it should have been organic. I should have made, strawberry sauce with whipped cream. Like, why couldn't I just go the next step? okay, that's great. Then I made homemade pancakes and I've got bacon and I've got eggs, but really you couldn't do another thing? Or, okay, now look at the kitchen and you really can't do the dishes, even though I just made this massive meal. Are you serious? Like, you can't now do the dishes and the kitchen's dirty. So, like, okay, yeah, that's great that I was able to do that, but come on, can't you do even a little bit more? And the reality is, I did that with everything. Everything I did, it was never good enough. If I made, or not even made, if I did homeschooling with my kids, I should have done, instead of doing 20 minutes, it should have been an hour. I should have done math, science, writing, and social studies, and we should have learned a foreign language. And this is probably the best thing ever as I'm looking back. There was a point where I was listening to a podcast or reading somebody's blog or something, and they were a homeschooling mom, and they had, she had been doing this for years and years and years. Now, at the time when I was reading this, I had only been doing this for like maybe 2 or 3 years. And I read this woman's blog, and she's talking about how the reason that they homeschool is because her child is an Olympic fencer. And in my mind, I was like, what am I doing with life? Like, why don't I have my kids in an Olympic sport? I mean, how ridiculous is that? Like, first of all, I don't even know if my kids would be interested in Olympic sport. So, like, that was my thinking. It was just never good enough. Even though I was giving everything I possibly could, it was never, ever good enough. And so recognizing what was blocking me and blocking my happiness was a really big thing. Now, like I said before, I don't know that this is your thing, and that's okay. That's okay. If you're like, no, I don't really have that problem, that's fine. But if you struggle with happiness, something's blocking it. Something is going on that is blocking you. You have a belief system that is literally blocking your happiness. And maybe it's that no matter what you do, it's everything you do is stupid. Maybe your opinion doesn't matter. Maybe your needs aren't valid. It could be so many different things. And so when you go to do that thing that would make you feel happiness or joy, instantly, nobody has to say anything, but you automatically go ahead and just like crush any joy or any happiness that possibly could have been felt with, well, like for me, that wasn't good enough. Or, okay, well, maybe that's okay, but it's a stupid idea because you thought of it. And so really figure out what it is, because it's something. You don't just not feel happiness for a reason. There's something, a belief, there's something in you. And like I said, we can go back. Maybe it's your mom, maybe it's your dad, maybe it's your aunt, maybe it's a teacher said something. Like, not that it doesn't matter, because your feelings matter. But the reason why doesn't necessarily matter as much as figuring out what it is, so then you can remove it and get past it. I love Marissa Peer. She's who I started with hypnotherapy. And one of the things that she always taught us was there are 3 reasons as to why you're not happy, like why you're not feeling joy or experiencing the things that you want to experience, basically. And the first one is that you don't think it's available to you. Like, you don't think it's even possible. So let's say you want to be an astronaut. You don't even think that's a possibility. And so you've just kind of given up on your dream. The second thing is somebody belittled it. Somebody said, oh my gosh, that's so ridiculous. And so now you're going, I'd really love to do this thing, but that's totally ridiculous. So it's kind of like the first one where you don't think it's possible, but it is possible. It's just that'd be stupid, or that'd be ridiculous, or that'd be an embarrassment for you to do that thing. And so for those 2 things right there has to be a belief that's been put in your head, probably by somebody else, as to why you can't get the thing that makes you feel happy. And so that is where I really want you to start. At least that's where I started, was what is going on to why I can't feel happiness. There was a couple of other ones, not as big as the it's not enough, or, nothing's ever enough. But is what I did to combat it is once I recognized it, that's the first step. The second thing I started to do is, from the moment I got up, and I wasn't always perfect with this, like even this, I was even this, when I started, I was like, oh, I didn't do a great job. But I've now made it a habit. But when I first started, which was a few years ago, I just started saying everything I did was enough. Like I woke up, and in my head, I'd instantly be like, you should have gotten up earlier. And I thought, nope, this was enough. This is exactly when I should have gotten up. Like, look at me. I went to bed at a good time, even if I didn't. I was like, I got to bed. I got some great sleep. Maybe I didn't get up as planned, but you know what? I slept well. And so I instantly tried to change it as soon as I recognized it. And sometimes it was much later. I'd be like, especially at the beginning, I'd be through half the day and I'd be like, oh, man, I can't do this right, and I'm not doing this right, and this isn't going wrong. And then I'd realize, oh my gosh, I'm doing it again. And then I'd go through kind of, not my whole day, but like a portion of my day where I'd say, no, okay, this was enough. This is enough. I did half the dishes. That's enough. That's enough. That's great. I made dinner, but didn't get things cleaned up. That was enough. And for somebody who just berated themselves nonstop all the time, of course I wasn't having happiness. Of course I wasn't feeling any kind of joy, because nothing I did was right. Nothing I did was good enough to where it'd be like, that was worth it. Because the second I finished anything, it was like, well, this is wrong, and this is wrong, and that's not good enough, and this isn't okay. And that's exhausting to live with. I know. I did it for many, many years. And if you're doing it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So first figure out what's blocking you. And if you want to figure out where it came from, that is helpful, but it's not necessary. So figure out what it is that's blocking you, whether you're not enough, whether, it makes you feel embarrassed to do something, or whatever it could be. Figure that out. And then figure out, well, what would the counter to that look like? What would it look like if I didn't do that? And start really kind of playing with it. And for me, I didn't get it perfect on the first time. I kind of fumbled through it. But make it a habit to switch your thinking and do the best that you can in switching your thinking. That's your only goal, is you're going, okay, I'm thinking one way. How can I switch my thinking to this way? And that's really the key to changing your mindset. It's figuring out, how do you switch that? And it's not perfect at first, because you have gone so long talking to yourself one specific way. Like I said, now the second I think of, oh, that's not good enough, I think, no, it's fine. And I can really feel it. And it doesn't take me very long to kind of get back to that point where I'm like, it's fine. You know what? It's fine. I still do it sometimes. Or if it's something I really care about, I'm like, is that enough? Is that good enough? Should I have done more? Maybe I should have done more. Maybe I should have made it better. Maybe I should have taken some more time. And now I'm kind of like, I will weigh it out. But then there's a point where I just got to say, you know what? It's great. It's good. It's fine. And it is fine. And I can really feel that it's fine. And once I've now determined, because I've trained my brain, I can now see the joy and happiness when I say that's enough. That's good enough. It's great. And then I look at it, I go, it is great. It is good enough. But I'll be really honest with you. At first, when you're saying it's enough, it's great, you're like, is it? Is it enough? Is it okay? And you're like, no, it is. It is enough. That's great. And you're kind of like, I guess. Yeah, it's enough. Yeah. So don't beat yourself up because you've been thinking one way so long that don't beat yourself up if it's taking you a minute to kind of switch that in your brain. And you can make notes. If you need to, like, make a reminder in your phone. There's so many things that you can do, honestly, to figure this out. But for me, I just was so adamant about behaving this way that I was like, this is what I'm focusing on. And I did, and I was able to switch my brain. Okay, so that kind of brings me to the next thing, which is another reason why you're not feeling joy and happiness. And this is the third thing that Marissa Peer mentions, and that is that you haven't tried enough stuff. Now, I do not believe if you are somebody of a certain age and you have lived a certain amount of years and you have tried stuff over and over again, this is probably not you. However, if you're a teenager and you're trying to figure out your life, or you're in middle school and you're trying to figure out your life and you're like, I don't know, just things don't make me happy anymore, this could be you. It could be. And I'm not saying because you've lived a certain amount of years that you haven't tried enough stuff, because again, maybe that's the weird belief. That's like the wrong thinking, is that it's not worth to try stuff, or I'm going to automatically fail, so why try? So maybe you really haven't tried things. So that is something to look at. Either you haven't tried enough stuff, right? Which is possible. Or you have kind of a negative thinking about certain stuff, and that's what's stopping your happiness. Okay, so if you have tried a bunch of stuff, go back to switching your thinking, because that's really your problem. Now, here's the thing that's kind of interesting. Once you have switched your thinking to, you're like, I kind of want to try some things. Like, I want to try, I think I might be able to start baking and find joy in baking, or start a garden and find joy in starting a garden, or crocheting, or tennis, right? Like all these things, because you're switching your thinking and you're like, no, this is enough. This is good enough. I can do this. So you're now changing your thinking. Here's the thing that's really kind of fascinating that I found is when you start trying things, because in the trying things, that is what you find joy in, is experiences and living life and growth and moving forward. And relationships. Okay. So all these things that bring us joy, experiences, relationships, growth, like all this stuff, before you had this huge blanket, so you couldn't find happiness through, even though you would try those things. You're like, this doesn't bring me joy. This actually is torture, and this sucks. So once you remove all of the first stuff, the negative thinking, you're like, okay, I've got this under control and I've changed my thinking. Now you actually have to try things, and you have to try them with your new mindset. The thing is, though, when you're trying things, it doesn't automatically bring you joy. It's not something that you're like, okay, I'm going to try gardening and it's going to bring me joy. It could, but let me just say, in my experience, it doesn't really bring you joy. So then you kind of go back around to, oh, great. Well, then nothing's going to bring me joy. And that's not true. Here's what I found. You fix your thinking. You try things that you want to try. And in the result of it, or after you kind of get past the chaos and the doing of it, you kind of find joy. You kind of got to muddle your way through, but it doesn't always just go straight into joy. And I hope this is making sense, especially if you're like at the very beginning, because I want this to bring you hope. I want this to bring you like, oh, no, okay, I can do this and it's going to be worth it. But the reality is, when you start doing things, because think of like a toddler. Think of like a toddler when they're beginning to walk, right? They want to walk. They're excited to walk. They're sick of crawling and they want to move. But how well do they walk? Not very well, because they don't really have the skill set to do it. Now, I totally get it that you're probably an adult. You're probably of a certain age where you're going, I'm not a toddler. No, you're not. But your skill set is in that specific area. You're not starting at what age you are. You're starting at a new person starting this habit. And so it could be frustrating. Now, some people I've truly seen, like I have people in my life who they love that beginning stage of like figuring it out and chaos. Like they really relish in the chaos, and that is their joy. Their joy is the chaos and like figuring it out and putting all the pieces together. They love that. And so if that's you, that's awesome. And this probably won't apply, because once you fix your mindset, you're going to look at your life and go, oh my gosh, look at all this stuff I get to like rearrange, and chaos is happening all over, and I get to fix this and move this here. And that's awesome. You're going to have another step somewhere along the lines that's going to be frustrating, because we all do. Because this is where I go back to, please, please, please go learn your energy type. Carol Tuttle, love her, love the whole concept. And I don't want to dive into it, because go learn about your energy type, which you're either 1, you're 2, 3, or 4. Technically, we're all 4 of them, but you have a primary one, you have a secondary one, third, fourth, all that stuff. Okay. Now, some energy types are going to relish in the process at the beginning where it's chaos and fixing things and new ideas and all this is so exciting. But to follow through and to finish it is going to be really hard for you. Some people, the chaos is going to be just so stressful, and look at this, and it's going to disrupt my life, and I just want a system, and I just want consistency, and that's going to be the struggle. But my point is somewhere in the pattern of life of figuring this skill set out, of whether it's gardening or tennis or something about it is not going to be fun, but you need to kind of push through it a little bit to make sure you know if you like it or not. Because if you get to the end and you're like, that was not worth it, great. Now you can move on to something else. But if you just stop when it's uncomfortable, now you're not really ever going to get to the joy part, because the joy part oftentimes is a certain part of either finishing it or seeing a finished product or getting the significance from it or getting the love and connection from it. Like, these are all the really important things, but you've got to go through kind of that painful part a little bit. It shouldn't be terribly painful, because if it's really, really painful and you just can't push through it, then you got to go back to your mindset. It's your mindset that's messing you up. You don't think you can. You don't think you're doing enough. You think, this is going to be embarrassing, right? So this is kind of the formula to follow. You've got to fix your thinking, first of all. And then when you follow this path to finding joy, to finding things that bring you joy, whether it's working on a relationship, finding things that bring significance to you, things that give you love and connection. These are the things that are going to bring you joy. But you do have to put work into them. But I do have to say that while you're doing this, sometimes it's uncomfortable in certain areas, because you've never done it before. And that kind of brings me to a couple of different things. And the first one is, we have 6 needs. And those 6 needs, everything we do is to get those needs. They are variety, consistency, love and connection, and significance. The last 2 are growth and contribution. But everything you do is to get one of those things. And that is what brings us happiness. Getting the love and connection with somebody is what brings us joy and brings us happiness. Getting significance from things, because we're important and there's a reason that we're here. Having different variety experiences and having a consistent life. These things bring us joy. Having growth and contributing things. But if you have your thinking in the way, then it doesn't matter what you do, you're not going to find joy in those, because your thinking is always going to interrupt what it is. So, as an example, if you really want love and connection, but you have it in your head, nobody will ever love me, there is nothing you can do to get enough love and connection when your brain is constantly telling you they don't really love you. They don't really care about you. They don't really, I mean, look at them. Look at the look they gave you. So you're constantly fighting your own thinking. And so when you figure out what's blocking it, then you can start switching your thinking. But you have to figure out what's blocking it. And then the next thing that you have to do is just try a bunch of different stuff. You have to. It can sometimes feel uncomfortable. It can sometimes feel overwhelming. It can sometimes be, oh, this is a lot. This is craziness. I feel like just chaos. Or you could be on board because I'm just doing the same thing over and over again. And with that, you just got to try new stuff. So now, once you kind of that's the second phase. The third phase is you now start trying things, which is awesome. And you start going into different stuff. And now you got to figure out the balancing act of the type of life that you want. And this is where you really start seeing the joy and the happiness coming in, because now you start having multiple things that bring you not just joy, but that you're getting growth over in one area of your life. You're getting significance in another area of your life. You're getting consistency in another area. And so you can start every day getting little bits of all these things that you need throughout the whole week, rather than just focusing on one thing at a time. And it's great to focus on one thing at a time. If you're really overwhelmed, just bring it down to one thing. If this seems really overwhelming, like, oh man, I'm totally low on significance and I'm low on love and connection and all these things, like I'm not getting anything out of any of them. Like I may have one thing, that's it. Just break it down to one thing for right now. Figure out what's blocking that. Figure out what thinking is happening. All right. I truly hope and I trust that this message got to whoever it needed to be. I love you guys giving feedback or asking questions. I am on Basic to Bold all over social media. So please, if you guys want to interact with me, find me on Instagram, TikTok. I'm all over and would love to engage with you guys. So hope you all have an amazing time and an amazing life.